It is so great to look out and see all of these faces here today, and I just want to thank you. I'm going to try to get through my comments without tears because it's moving, but we're here today because the state of Maine is suing a farmer. Who is Farmer Brown? Well, I'm Heather Retberg of Quills End Farm in Penobscot. I am Farmer Brown. Maggie Robertson of Pennsylvania is Farmer Brown. Kelly Estrella of Montesano, Washington is Farmer Brown. Jean Hara in Santa Cruz County, California is Farmer Brown. Sue Wallace of Wyoming, Food Freedom, is Farmer Brown. We are farmers who are supported by our friends and our neighbors who know us and trust us and want to ensure that they maintain access to their chosen food supply. These women are more Farmer Browns who have worked hard to maintain the rights to their local food system, and some are just trying to survive. In rural communities everywhere, we are all Farmer Brown. Why? What is this all about? Well, this winter, after the election, members of our local rules group were invited to meet with our soon-to-become Agricultural Commissioner, Walt Whitcomb, just a few days before his confirmation. He was open to hearing our concerns about the regulatory threats to our small farms before he got to Augusta. The man some of us met with then understood. He got it. As he understood our concerns, he told us, we essentially wanted to sell food like his grandfather had, just from one person to another, from his farm to the people who wanted the farm's goods, not interested in getting big or mass distribution. Was that right? It was very right. We new farmers were very like his grandfather. Commissioner Whitcomb's grandfather is Farmer Brown too, able to grow, produce, and sell within his own community without intervention from the state or federal government. But now, Commissioner Whitcomb is suing Farmer Brown, and it threatens all of us. We are no longer farmers, according to the rapidly changing vocabulary of the regulatory world. By redefining farmers as milk distributors or food processors, the rules require facilities of such entities that are entirely inappropriate to diversified, small, family-scale cottage operations. These rules threaten to quietly erase farmers and access to locally raised food from our communities. In the state of Maine, farming is increasing, but it is also in a precarious position. In the last 60 years, we have lost much of our infrastructure. In our area alone, we're a handful of creameries: Tamworth Farm, Hancock County Creamery, Grants in Brewer, Footman's. There were local slaughterhouses or neighbors to pitch in and do the job together. During the same time period, the regulatory structure has been built up. So now, enter we, the new generation of farmers on the land, minus the infrastructure. Direct marketing is necessary. There is no creamery anymore to take the milk, but there are an increasing number of people willing to come to the farm to get it. And the regulations coming out of our state agencies are requiring that small farmers rebuild this infrastructure. To make this economically feasible, we have to specialize. Just make cheese, just raise chickens. But we want diversified farms because it's good for the ecology of our farms and for the economy of our farms. Our customers want us to raise more of what they like. Because we sell directly to our patrons, we are responsive to their requests. But we can't legally butcher chickens at a neighbor's farm if they have the equipment and the facility. We are each now required to build our own. It's a big problem. It's one that we aimed to address with the local food and community self-governance ordinance. There is little infrastructure here, so we will work together to raise food, process it, and sell it to our patrons. The patrons are informed and responsible for their choices. It's a good system. It's a working system. The local food and community self-governance ordinance is a way we did, in our towns, codify into law the way things have always been done. What does the licensure and inspection process do to ensure food safety? To qualify for a license requires more than just the $25 to $50 for the license. It requires significant facilities. It is a mandated expense. There is no educational requirement, no training, no workshop required to obtain a license. You must have the requisite building and the equipment. If this lawsuit or the rules are about food safety, isn't education advisable? Will an ignorant farmer, as those of us without licensure are often portrayed, will produce high-quality food because of a facility and sporadic inspector visits? Or can a knowledgeable farmer provide beautiful, safe food in many settings? Home kitchens, church kitchens, grange kitchens. If there is a doubt that small farms selling to neighbors can produce safe food, mandate education, not expense. But this is not about food safety. It's about who is deciding what happens in our communities. Suing a farmer in an ordinance-protected town is not an answer to food safety. Suing Dan Brown is not acceptable in our towns here in Western Hancock County. Why now? I believe that as the sustainable agriculture local food movement has grown and continues to grow, we are increasingly visible to regulatory agencies and to the food industry, which is in the position to write the rules. We simply didn't matter before. The more we grow, the more successful and widespread we become, the more regulatory attention we must expect to garner. The Department of Agriculture in our state, the USDA, and the FDA are increasingly enforcing rules that didn't exist before, reinterpreting existing rules, redefining language, and making new laws to govern what we are doing. Okay, this is my favorite part. This is a storytelling part. A couple years ago, I remember telling an Aesop's fable to my kids. It's called The Camel and His Nose. The story is about a desert herdsman who had set up his tent for the night. As it grew cold, his camel grew cold as well. Knowing that the herdsman would not let him into his tent as he was much too big, he asked his kind master if he could just put his nose into the tent as it had gotten chilly. What follows is a very respectful discourse between the herdsman and his camel. And as the camel successfully wheedles his nose, his head, his neck, his front legs, and eventually his whole body into the tent, eventually evicting the herdsman. As the herdsman shivers in the dark desert night, he reflects that he should never have even allowed the nose into his tent. And the moral of the story is bad habits start small. The tone of our discourse with the Department of Agriculture until now had been this way. They speak very reassuringly that what they are requiring is really not burdensome. just minimal facilities and the most rudimentary rules necessary. But this nose is attached to a very big camel. That camel is the FDA. Here's what the FDA has to say about all of us. There is no absolute right to consume or feed children any particular food. There is no deeply rooted historical tradition of unfettered access to foods of all kinds. And the assertion of a fundamental right to their own bodily and physical health is unavailing because consumers do not have a fundamental right to obtain any food they wish. This is the agency that is pressuring our state Department of Agriculture to act. We do not possess the rights enumerated in our food ordinance according to the FDA. Commissioner Whitcomb readily admits that they are under intense pressure from the FDA and are being watched closely as these events unfold. The USDA threatened to take over Maine's meat inspection program when the state considered legislation similar to our ordinances. The Department of Agriculture has told us that their hands are tied by this federal framework. If they will not take our message to those federal agencies, but instead to continue to impose the federal framework on us, they bind us all along with them. So we're here today, and I'm here with you not because I'm unafraid of what consequences may yet come, but because I fear more our silence. If we, as a community, allow one farm to be targeted and just watch, aghast, from a safe distance, a little bothered but untouched, we all lose. If we permit his demise, the scapegoating of Farmer Brown, quietly witnessing but do not act, we all lose as a community. We must go forward, I believe, because in our towns we have acted democratically to legally adopt the local food and community self-governance ordinance. In 5 towns, we aimed to protect with local law our traditional foodways, our farmers, our home kitchens, our community suppers, and our bake sales. We have asserted the right to choose what foods we eat and what we feed our families. I ask you today to be bold. I know that we will need to defend our food system. Defend it? Yes. When one drop of rain, when one comment or letter becomes a trickle of comments and letters, they soon turn into streams, and the streams run into rivers. Let these rivers run wild. This much goodness cannot be contained. We need all of us. We are all Farmer Brown. So please stand up with us today, for us and for yourselves. Urge the state to drop this lawsuit against Farmer Brown. Urge the state of Maine to recognize the authority of our communities to govern our own food system. Now comes the fun part, because this is actually a rally, so there should be some cheering involved. So first I say, who is Farmer Brown? Farmer Brown. You know your part already, that's so great. Who is Farmer Brown? Farmer Brown. And one more time, who is Farmer Brown? We are Farmer Brown. The third time's the charm. Who is Farmer Brown?
We are Farmer Brown!
Thank you all so much for joining us here today.
Thank you, Heather. Thank you so much.